Right now with AI and with opportunities that we have in front of us, we really need to get into the right mindset.
The interesting part again around Gen I is that you now have...
What are the skills you think that's most critical? Because there's been a lot of emphasis on technical skills, coding skills, or using AI tools and STEM and these kind of things. Are those really that critical?
I would suggest in the age of Gen I to still be able to be that human in the loop. You'll have that human judgment point. I think that's shifting, but it isn't disappearing. It's just shifting where we may work with AI.
Welcome to another episode of ReLearning Work, where we dive into the future of learning and work. In each episode, we bring you conversations with leaders from industry and education to challenge assumptions, propose ideas, and share learnings as we all navigate this world that is being reshaped by Agentic AI. Now, whether you're an educator, a student, or a business executive looking to stay ahead in this rapidly changing landscape, there is something here for you. I'm David Yip, your host. And today, I'm joined by Professor Steven Warburton, Vice-Chancellor for Education Innovation at the University of Newcastle in Australia, where he leads a large portfolio spanning academic development, employability and careers, and quality enhancement. For over 25 years, Steven has spearheaded transformative learning initiatives across universities in the UK, New Zealand, and Australia. Steven's leadership is sought after across the sector, with appointments including Co-chairing ASCILITE, the Southern Hemisphere's premier education technology conference for 2 consecutive years, and he's currently President of CAULLT, the Australasian peak professional body for leaders in learning and teaching. Steven's extensive background in these positions give him a unique perspective in Agentic AI, its challenges and emerging opportunities for both higher education and industry. So welcome, Steven.
Thank you, David. Gosh, that was a long intro, but thank you.
I'm so glad you could be on the show today. You've got a history from in both IT and also education, and now with AI, blending those two together is more important than ever. Can you tell us a bit about how you got into this space? And because you studied something quite different, right? I think it was a neuroscience or something.
Yeah, good memory, David. Yeah, I did. I mean, I started off, I guess, as a scientist. So through applied zoology, I potted history. I won't go for this too long. Applied zoology. And then I enjoyed university so much, I never actually escaped. And I decided to do research and postdocs. So I worked in the area of neuroscience and then also clinical biochemistry. And then a little bit of a career pivot after a couple of postdocs when I realized I wasn't fully interested in science, and this new thing called computer-aided learning came along. So I decided to take a career pivot. I moved into that sort of domain of activity. It was new, it was exciting. I kind of had a sense that computers and education were going to be tightly bound forevermore, if I put it that way, and I've not been wrong. So I built a career really based coming through sort of digital technologies and education. I've had various roles around that, from both academic, from, I guess, leadership around projects, working with the European Union, big projects there, and then all the way through now to the roles that I've recently had, which have more been sort of running large teams with institutions, mostly in the domain of learning, teaching and assessment now. So it's been an interesting career with a few zigzags in it. And of course, you mentioned I've moved across different parts of the world as well. So again, that's been quite exciting, quite challenging, but also fulfilling as well.
Well, that gives you a really broad perspective between geographies, between different types of cultures, economies, and so on. But the neuroscience thing, I was attracted to that because one thing that I do explore with my podcast is mindset. And how people think about things. Right now with AI and with opportunities that we have in front of us, we really need to get into the right mindset. And so the first thing I want to really ask you is, from an assumption point of view, are there anything that you think we have to be aware of in terms of the assumptions that we're making, or maybe we might not be aware of, that we do need to know about?
Yeah, I think there are many assumptions. Don't you think, David? I think you would probably have a few as well. And I think it's interesting. If we're thinking more specifically, and I know we're going to be talking about relearning work, then if I were to focus in on that, I think there are some very specific assumptions we have around work. I mean, just a few. One, jobs are static. And we
Yeah.
have to challenge that. Jobs are constantly changing, reshaping. I can't remember what the statistic is about how many different careers we may have as well within our lifespan. I think it's 7, I think, at the last count. So again, what are we preparing our graduates for in terms of world of work when we consider that world of work is going to be changing? What does it mean for the professions, in particular in the way that they operate as well? I think there are other assumptions around that AI is going to come and eat your job. I think we know that one. It's a bit of a myth. Often, really, where we're looking at is AI is potentially replacing tasks, and we might want to delve into that later, David. The other is it's there to augment what we do as well. Then there are others are, I guess, around thinking, just touching on what our graduates come out, do our kind of what I'd call fairly traditional educational models. Do they really prepare the students for the world of work? And there is assumption still that they do. I think we need to really start challenging that. And I think we're going to dive into this a bit in this podcast as well, is what does that actually look like? And the final one I'll throw out there is one I haven't thought too much about, but came to mind was often we think about work as an individual endeavor. And I know that's changed. I think that's a little bit old fashioned, has changed, but still that kind of prevails. And we really need to be thinking about what the world of work is as a collaborative, cooperative enterprise where AI is one of our collaborators. Collaborates with us. So I think that's quite an interesting one as well that we may well delve into.
Well, there's definitely a lot of things they just mentioned there, but central to that, I think a lot of people have front of mind is this whole assumption that AI is going to take away my job. That, I guess, when I hear that, sometimes I think, well, what is the nature of the job that we're doing today? And if AI is going to take that away, is that necessarily a bad thing? What do you think?
Not necessarily. It depends if it takes your pay packet away, David. I think let's just remember that as well.
Yes, that's very true.
I think there's some fundamental basics there that actually no, and I don't think it's not a bad thing, because I think we're always looking at ways. Economically, there's always going to be pressure to be efficient, to rationalize resources. We know that, and we're feeling that pinch in the higher education sector at the moment, is really to be understand what we're doing, both across the business systems, but also across learning and teaching, etc. So anything we can do to increase what I'd call those efficiencies often puts pressure on those kind of highly manual, soft processes that build as kind of, I often come across processes that operate around something that's broken, and we build on top of that. It takes usually kind of business analysts to come in and say, well, why are you doing it this way? So I don't think that's a bad thing. Those efficiencies often lead and allow us to do other things. And I would hope that what it allows us to do, certainly at the moment, is to spend more time doing the more innovative, creative, value-add work. And I think that's what we all want. And that's what I strive to think, that where we would sort of engage Gen AI and tool sets, etc., is to really allow us to do more of that fun. Work and fun can go together, I think.
Yeah.
That fun part of work as well, which is around the creativity and innovation as well.
Yeah, so there's also, I guess, an implied portfolio of skills that we need to be able to shift from what we're doing today to some of this, I guess, the fun aspects of work or new types of work. What are the skills you think that's most critical? Because there's been a lot of emphasis on technical skills, coding skills, or using AI tools and STEM and these kind of things. But what do you think? Are those really that critical, or other skills? How should we be thinking about skills?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So again, I don't know. I always like to give you two answers, David, so you can pick the one you like. So I think we're driven. Again, I kind of step back a bit and think, okay, what's driving the skills we need? I think, for instance, where I am, and I'll just speak from my perspective, a lot of the work I'm doing at the moment has been around just for, I'm at Newcastle University at the moment in Australia, has been looking at our graduate attributes. So that is a big driver for us around what skills are we imbuing in our students as they come into the workforce. Our graduate attributes tend to lead that. I was at the Sydney Leaders AI Roundtable. One of the interesting comments there that kind of struck quite a few people was that Gen AI is an arrival technology, and in that arrival has almost become a graduate attribute almost immediately. And that it's almost should be sitting there alongside our institution. We have 5 graduate attributes. Should Gen AI be one of those graduate attributes? And the reason I kind of like that is it then says, well, we have to roll our graduate attributes into our program learning outcomes, which I think is a really positive way to think about it, and then down into our course learning outcomes, and therefore into the kinds of skills we're generating. So there's that aspect as well about how we sort of pull the pull of what we do within the institution in terms of developing those skills. In terms of the skills themselves, I think technical is important. I think it always is and always will be. We work in a digital environment. Digital literacy has always been key, I think, for us to make sure our graduates are capable in using technology in this broadest sense. But I've actually been quite taken with, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier around, I had to write it down because I always forget the reference. It's the Hantano Inagi paper from 1984. Which talks about routine versus adaptive expertise. So I really like this idea of adaptive expertise and how do we build that into our students. It's not new. I said 1984, and often a lot of things aren't new, but I think it's really meaningful at the moment. So when you're in unfamiliar situations, when you've got adaptive expertise, you can quickly gain that proficiency with the kinds of knowledge representations that allow for flexibility. So I've probably completely ruined that paper's summary, but it's a really nice one. I really encourage people to look at that. And there are, for our students, I think there's 5 areas that kind of have been drawn out of that, and I'll let you come in, David. One is about agreeableness. The other is conscientiousness. There is extroversion, emotional stability, and adaptive beliefs, which are quite interesting skills, which I probably wouldn't have been speaking to maybe 10 years ago. So it's interesting to see what's coming through. Yeah.
Well, actually, those skills, and as you're saying that, I did want to highlight, because when I talk about AI and tech and all these kind of things, the immediate reaction is, oh, this is all technical, and I'm not technical, or I'm not a programmer, or I don't know how to use these tools. But what you mentioned just then, none of them are technical skills. They're not computer related. They're actually human related. Being adaptable, being flexible, and these kind of things. Are not what you learn in engineering. They're kind of what you learn in the humanities, the art subjects. And I think that's kind of, I guess, the focus area, right? What you're talking about. You got to have the balance. You got to have some technical skills. But I think all of those ones you just mentioned, do you see them as more important now? Because let's say, I'm not seeking a technical career, or I'm not in a technical role right now. I might be a salesperson or a marketing person or in HR, or what AI skills do I need to flourish or to be able to transition to a new role?
Yeah, those are good questions, David.
Or actually, I might be an academic teaching students, right? What are the AI skills that I need?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to that. Goes back to the point I was making a little bit earlier, which is around in this kind of transition phase into what is, maybe we're already there, David. I don't know if you've got a comment on that. The world of AI being part and parcel of what we do every day. It's really becoming more and more embedded. I wouldn't say it's fully there. Talking to students here at Newcastle, I think there's still a number of concerns that students have about the academic integrity aspects, but also around the veracity of what comes out of AI, even though AI is improving massively. So I think those skills that we're talking about, yes, I think there is a technical element that it should be, but really somebody mentioned to me and used the word transferable skills, which was something I hadn't heard for quite some time, was a big thing back in 2010, something like that. We were always talking about giving students transferable skills. I think that's what we need at the moment. Again, going back to that adaptivity, what do transferable skills look like? Now, some of those are technical, I don't deny that, but a lot of them aren't, are they? We're always seeking, and employers always tell us, we need critical thinking, problem solving, the ability, I would suggest in the age of Gen AI, to still be able to be that human in the loop.
Yes.
Still have that human judgment point. And I think that's shifting, but it isn't disappearing. It's just shifting where we may work with AI and we trust and offload. I think that's probably the terminology, even as cognitive offloading, but we still need to be in making judgments in the loop. And the other word I've kind of liked as well was, not fall into the trap of what's also been termed lazy cognition as well.
Yeah.
Although I think we've had lazy cognition's been around for a while as well. But again, certainly now it's really paying attention to our work with AI, what it offers, and that experimentation around the good, the bad, and the kind of indifferent.
For a long time, right, in education, we teach people how to get answers. You research, you find out what the answer is, find out what the solution is. I think what we're seeing now is that with AI, that perhaps isn't as important as knowing what questions to ask. You mentioned critical thinking and the creativity part, because it's so easy to get answers now. You don't quite know whether those answers are complete or correct even. So you need to keep asking questions of the AI, for example, to get better answers, get more accurate, get more complete ones. But I think asking questions is a skill, right? It's something that is actually, I found at least, a lot harder than it sounds. When I first started using AI, it's like, well, actually, I thought asking questions was easy, but it's actually very hard, particularly when you're asking questions about a topic you don't quite know, or you're asking questions to try and get a particular outcome.
Yeah, I think it's a really good great observation. I found this, I've got to say, I found the same. You don't like to admit it, but you think it must be simple. And then you find, like you, I found actually to get the best out of the tools, it takes practice, it takes exploration. I think where we're interested, then again, but that's an interesting one to touch on, because I think it's where we're seeing changes in the way that we're starting to interface with Gen AI as well. So initially it was a little bit, for me, it reminds me of hand coding HTML for a website, which I remember doing years and years ago. And that prompting initially, it was very much like that. You're learning the prompts. The change, though, has been with the interfaces, the necessity to really prompt engineer to the degree which we probably might have anticipated has changed. And that is very easy to ask a tool to help you write the prompt. So the tools are now helping you design better questions based on what you need to find out. So I think the nature of what we question and how we question has changed a bit as well. And I can see that adapting over time. We were a little bit obsessed initially, and I think it was across sector. We need to teach students how to prompt. I'm a little bit less stressed about that in terms of skill set. I think, we need to understand what prompting is. We need to understand what input looks like into the Gen AI tool set, but they are there to help us as well. And I think sometimes when we start to talk about Agentic AI, you're more or less giving it a task now as well to go off, and it can self-reference almost to give you some kind of view of whether it's doing a good job or not. You can get it to comment on whether your prompt is good or not. So that conversational element is probably more important, because that's the other bit I found hard, was actually you ask a single question, it's one shot. You look at the answer and go, geez, that was poor.
Yeah.
I could have gone to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Actually, when you have a conversation, you start realizing, oh, this is quite exciting, because I'm now developing an interrogation and almost a research piece into the particular domain, and I'm finding new things out as I go through that. And that's great, because you're doing that on the spot with an intelligent engine. That's really that is very exciting. I think that's exciting for students as well. And that's the excitement you kind of want to pass on to your educators. We mentioned, what do they need to have? I think they have confidence in that they can work with Gen AI, and it doesn't take away their professional identity, if I put it that way.
Historically, you have the wise lecturer standing in front of the hall and all the students looking at them and just learning, writing and scribing. But now everyone's kind of learning at the same time. It kind of reminds me when I started uni. This was when the internet just started. It was in 1995, where the students know as much, if not more, than the lecturer. And it's pretty interesting when we're learning off each other. And I think that's one of the skills that we also have to know. So you mentioned before about collaboration and working together, the learning aspect as well. It's we have to be constantly learning amongst ourselves, peer learning, social learning. You wrote a paper about that, or handbook even, about community and learning.
I did. I think you go back to the basics of pedagogy. Learning as a social constructivist is very much around sharing knowledge, analysing, debating, challenging ideas, coming together. Learning for me is a social process. The interesting part, again, around Gen AI is that you now have a tool, an engine that allows you to do almost that social peer-based learning at speed and at the time you need. So we talk about the best available human, and often Gen AI can now be the best available human if you are, for our students who need flexibility, for example. A lot of our students are working. If they come back, it's late at night, and they need to kind of quiz an area of knowledge, the academic isn't going to answer the phone at 10 p.m. at night.
Correct. Yeah.
Except to swear down the phone. Gen AI is offering some really interesting possibilities in that space as well. So allowing students now to really interrogate parts of the syllabus, the curriculum that they're studying as well. And I think that's really exciting. That's that kind of adaptive approach. Fantastic.
So there's two things that you just mentioned there, which I want to dig into then. One is sort of the fact that students are working a lot more while they're studying, but also this students leaning on the technology a lot more of the learning rather than maybe the lecturer or each other. So on that latter one, how do you see the university fitting into this model? Because last year, I guess lectured at a few universities and a few hundred students, and one thing that I did observe was that I think the social aspect of the university has just completely changed. People are not turning up to class, the campus is a bit empty, and no matter how much we try, it's just not what it used to be. But I think that is so important, though, to get it back to some vibrant campus life that it used to be, to help people learn the human aspects, the social aspects. And the universities, I think, has a really important role for that.
Talk about this for quite a while. I'll try and be brief. So if anybody's listening to this and they work at a university, the notion of the vibrant campus, I think, has become one of those phrases that we're all using, which is exactly post-COVID, trying to bring both our students, but also academics back as well, onto the campus. So I think there's a lot of activity around that, and that goes all the way from, I find quite interesting, the way that the campus is architected, if I do that, the architecture of the campus. So we have, and many universities do, are looking at what the shape of the campus looks like and the kinds of learning spaces that we want to have around. And we here talk about the campus heart, but effectively, what is at the heart of the campus? And you'll be shocked to hear that the library tends to be at the heart of the campus, and people do love coming to the library. They do, don't they? So build around your library, and we've created different kinds of spaces around that to increase that kind of campus activation. And that's an ongoing challenge for us as well. I think the other side of this as well is just to really nuance the student journey and where students may well want to come on campus and may not want to come on campus as well. You see that will come together. We know from the surveys that we run that our first year students coming in really want the social part of student life. They really do. They strongly want to be on campus for that. They're not necessarily so excited to stand in front of a lecturer simply standing and delivering content, really. And that's not that all lecturers do that, but I think that then feeds into the active learning approach that I think most institutions have adopted, where we encourage active learning and we encourage active learning spaces where now you can do more group collaborative work. And going back to the little thing you said earlier, David, you're not the sage on the stage, you're not the guide on the side either, but actually you are the meddler in the middle. So you're in the middle with the students, problem solving, learning together. That's a really nice way to think about it. And I think that's what the modern approach is you're in the middle with students, working with them. So I think there's that as well. So later along the student journey, we often find that where we hopefully, and I think that's what we strive to do, we've built some of that autonomy, self-directed learning, that students choose how they then want to engage with what we offer. If I put it, and when I say offer, I mean the broad sense, from both the social to the learning side of that, and they can choose what suits their lifestyle and the way that the discipline as well. So they may not come on campus as much, and I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. What we should be doing is adapting our offering to make sure that we have more that is digital and online for those students who want to be flexible, and that's straightforward. And I think we do that. It's not difficult to provide different ways to imagine the learning materials and provide different kinds of engagements, which may well be more around that kind of small group tutorial activity, which has real value, where you've got that relationship which we should cherish between our academic and our students. It's absolutely critical. It has the biggest impact on learning and the biggest impact on success. So that's what we should be looking for, best value. Campus. I think it's what I'm seeing is the campus is quite lively, I have to say. We've got a lot of students coming around, buzzing around the social spaces. I've not been in the lecture theatres yet, but again, we run active learning spaces here and they are well used.
I love that meddler in the middle, because that, to me, brings up images of being fully immersed, the academic and the student learning together. Definitely, that's something that I've seen and heard students really want more and more of, the academics' time. They can find out the content themselves online or ask ChatGPT, but they always want to sort of validate that and sort of discuss that more with their teacher or their mentor. And so definitely meddler in the middle. That's going to catch on, Stephen. The other thing, and this goes to the earlier point about students working more. A lot of students, they're not coming to campus, and the university adapting by making their offerings more flexible and online and things like that. But and that's important because a lot of students are working now, and I was quite surprised how many are working now versus certainly when I went to uni, it was kind of like the minority that was working. Now it's kind of the other way around. How are you seeing this earn while you learn models evolve, and what are you doing at Newcastle, for example?
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. Again, there's been a lot just broadly from Jobs and Skills Australia have been really hot on the topic. Here in Australia, we've got Barney Glover, who's Chief Commissioner JSA, so he's been quite vocal around the linkages between what is the vocational sector and higher education sector and how they link together and how those can articulate into various paid earn while you learn models as well. It is a hot topic here in Australia. I guess it is probably globally as well at the moment. Is how do we do that?
Well, in the UK, there's the degree apprenticeships, right? Quite popular.
Yeah, so I was well, you just beat me to it. I was going to say that's a model. When I just left the UK, degree apprenticeships were really coming in. They've been embraced. I think initially there's always been a little bit of a, does it work? We want the 3-year degree, we want the full attention of our students. The reality is now I don't think there are that many students who can really just do 3-year. Our student load isn't full. It's at about 0.75. Other universities are different. It just shows there needs to be flexibility so we can go out and earn while they are studying. I'm a big fan of the degree apprenticeship model. I think it's something that in Australia we could certainly start to engage with. And I know there are conversations around this. It was raised, I was at Universities Australia conference, and it was something that started to be raised. There was an award around a few of those degree apprenticeship models. So I think we're going to see some traction in there. And I think the Accord as well here in Australia is also starting to push on that. So degree apprenticeships works really well. The model I saw in the UK when I left, though, I was at the University of Surrey at the time, was really around what was the old kind of sandwich model where you basically took a year out. We had 36 weeks of paid placement out in industry and you come back in and finish your degree. It's extremely popular. Our students were highly valued and highly sought after. So that's a different kind of way of doing out into the workplace, building the skills. Often these are paid placements and being able to actually then take a period out where you are kind of earning and learning. I think at the moment for us, we're still thinking through flexibility to allow that work-based commitment for students, if I put it that way. Our current model here at Newcastle, we have what we call career-ready placements. We're very much it can be internship style, but it can also be paid placements. So we are actually trying to encourage, in fact, we've made it actually mandatory that all students will have a work integrated learning experience. So we have 140 hours minimum that every student will partake to build those skill sets, but also provide some opportunities as well to get out and actually be in a paid placement while they're learning as well.
And is that all students at all year levels or just final year or particular?
Later year, so second, third year mostly come in and they'll take a course. That course is a work integrated learning course, so it has the learning outcomes around that as well. So it's a full credit and it is part of the degree offering. It is just getting up to scale now. We've had some really good engagement with industry and industry partners, and I think it's a way for us to do more than just. It's a two-way flow as well, David. Just as the student goes out, industry then has a contact with the university, so it's almost like a conversation through your students. So they're going in, they're learning workplace skills. They may be bringing some Gen AI skills in, hopefully from what we're doing into the workplace. So they are spreading out the workplace, they're learning employability skills, and then we have a channel into the university to then think about, are there joint opportunities, which may be about research or grants, etc. So we have a really strong bedrock around how industry and the university work together. And I think that is the future. And I think that's the way all universities need to show their value.
Fantastic. And can you point to like a specific example of a industry partner working with Newcastle or another university for that matter? It's just a really good collaboration between industry and university.
Yeah, we have a whole range. So I'll just pick one that I like. Basically, we have a whole range from very big organisations in the region here. Just for those who don't know, Newcastle, it's a region that's very much one of the leading regional economies in Australia. So our GDP is around 43 billion. And there are around 322,000 jobs that are likely to hit around 384,000 by 2036. And we generate about 60 billion in gross revenue. I had to read those off the slide, by the way, just because I couldn't remember those figures. I know it looked impressive. It's a region that's changing from really a kind of steel town coal into something that is clean energy. So it's really exciting. So we have a lot of relationships around clean energy. So some great stuff around working with industry, for example, where we are collaborating with micro credentials and we're building those out. But in terms of those partnerships, yes, clean energy, but we just work with local authorities as well. So one of the I really love the recent project, and this is just stuck in my mind, is that we were just working around the film festival. We had students come in. There are creative design students. They were asked to come in and do all the design work, all the comms, all the media, all the marketing for the local film festival. It was fantastic. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So they
pretty fun too.
Yeah, well, they had a real brief. It was great. So they came in, had a full briefing session. They did the reverse brief. They developed the artifacts. They went back to the local authority. They were signed off. They've got their mentor, which was an academic, their mentor, which is industry based. Yeah, it was a fantastic project. Went down very well in the community. And in a way, that really feeds into something about being a regional university for us as well, is that we want students to stay in the community and add value to the region. So that was a great partnership. And we have many like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these projects will be going out, and the other ones will be, we've got an I2N, which is basically an entrepreneur accelerator unit. So again, we bring industry in there. So we've got students working on kind of innovation projects, entrepreneurship projects, as well as group collaborations as well. Very exciting. And I love that bit as well. So some really good stuff going on here.
Excellent. So we're almost at time now. So just wrapping up with the final question, and I ask this of all my guests. And this is Education Podcast. Would like to ask you for the teacher or a mentor or a coach or a previous manager, but a teacher who's made the most impact in your life and why.
The personal question at the end. Okay, so I'm going to cheat because I think I've got two. I kind of indicated one early on, and I think it was important. So they're two different parts of my career. The early one was when I was working at the University of Cambridge. I was in the Department of Clinical Biochemistry, so I was still the scientist that I mentioned earlier. It was a colleague who was running a research lab and started to work in digital education, which I mentioned, and we started to work together on a number of different projects around. I wasn't quite moonlighting, but I was kind of started to do all this extra work around how do we make visible what we do in clinical biochemistry? What does it look like? How do we teach? So it was a really cooperative, inspiring. He was very passionate about the area, digital education, and he went off, left science, and went to work with an independent company in Cambridge around learning materials. And that was the career pivot for me. So I worked, and then said, I want to do the same. So I wasn't completely original. I followed somebody who I guess was a bit of a mentor. So that was great. That was my career pivot, and I'm really grateful for that. The other then I would say is later as well, my DVCA when I was in the UK. Jill Nichols. I'm not sure she's going to watch the podcast or not, but anyway, I'll mention by name. Yeah, really had a strong influence the way that I approach leadership. And I think, again, that was me stepping into leadership roles. Jill was a strong mentor for me there as well. So there are two big career moments. And she said something to me. I don't know if this sounds good or not. Maybe your listeners will have a thought about this, but I was building different teams at the time, and she gave me lots of tips, but one of them, she took me to her office one day and she said, Steve, just a word of advice, they're not your friends. And I went, they're colleagues, they're team members, they're collaborators, but they're not your friends. And I went, okay. And that sounds a bit negative, but I thought, oh, you're right, actually. This is not about pleasing everybody. This is about leading people.
Yes.
And what does that mean? And that means it means bringing people through and building them and investing in them. So it was just a little shift, which I've always carried with me. And I think it's a really important one, is to just think, it's not about me having friends. It's about developing and thinking about how you draw. So it's a big leadership moment, essentially. There you go, David.
Fantastic. Thank you. And look, it's so important to have teachers, mentors, coaches at all points of your life, because especially when you're going through big transitions, it's these kind of people who help us along. And I always love hearing these stories. So thank you. And so the very last segment on the show is a show about plugs. it's always good to be able to, have the opportunity to plug something or someone or some organization. And so Stephen, you can plug your own university, or you can plug a company that you, or a charity. Who do you want to, or what do you want to plug?
I've spruiked Newcastle enough, so I think everybody was got enough interest to go and go. No, look, it's just on that leadership piece, and I was going to drop into it. Was really just for those who are listening and moving into leadership roles, particularly in education. I work for not-for-profit peak professional body, CAULLT, the Council of Australasian University Leaders and Teachers. We have a lot of resources. We do a lot of landscape studies. Go in, grab some resources. We work with Advanced HE in the UK, so we've kind of got a little bit of a global connection. Yeah, fantastic organisation. Have a look at the website. I also work with the Centre for Online Distance Education at the University of London, looking at distance education, but more broadly now doing a lot of work around Gen AI and assessment, etc. So again, great organisation. They've got a couple of books out now, lots of occasional papers. I recommend some great materials there as well. And thanks, David.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, well, all those details will be in the show notes, so please have a look, and encourage you to follow as well. For myself, I will shamelessly plug this show, so please don't forget to subscribe and like, and go to your favorite podcast app or where you heard this thing from, and give us 5 stars or whatever the good thing is, and reach out if you would like us to answer a question or just engage. I'd love to hear from you. And that's it. Another episode of ReLearning Work. We'll hope to see you next time.